Hi there, my name's Anastasia Kapetas. I'm the National Security Editor here at ASPI. And today I'm here with one of our special guests for the Women in Defence and National Security Network series that explores the lives and careers of really interesting women national security professionals. So today we have ASPI's own Karly Winkler. She is a senior analyst at the International Cyber Policy Centre and also acting director of the centre at the moment. Karly, welcome today.
Thanks so much, Anastasia. It's cool to be here.
Look, just to get right into what you're doing at the moment, you've got a forthcoming report that's an artificial intelligence explainer. Can you tell us a little bit about what it explores and what kinds of recommendations for policymakers you're kind of putting out there?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of papers out there about AI and a lot of narrative in the public domain. It's focusing on algorithms and ethics, and that's great, and they're important issues, but arguably not the biggest ones.
So fascinating. Tell us more.
The issues I think we have right now that we're not doing anywhere near enough on is really the ecosystem around AI. Mm-hmm. So consider the case of having a child, right? There is a certain amount of effort that goes into biologically creating that child. And the vast majority of time and money and effort goes into parenting it for the next 20 to 100 years, right? So parents have to think about things like health, safety, education, diet, the boundaries and rules that are going to apply to each stage of that child's life, social skills, and how it grows into becoming a productive member of society, right? So AI, there are equivalents for every single one of these things that look at how we make and engage with AI, and we manage data, and we can govern it in a way that is going to grow it to be trustworthy, dependable, accountable and transparent when we need it to be, and really properly functional. And there is a cost to all of those things. And of course, when you're raising children, all of those frameworks, there's standards for every aspect of parenting, right? Like dietary requirements and a syllabus for school at each stage of the kid's development. All these sort of frameworks, childcare, child protection laws and welfare. All of these frameworks exist around raising children, but no one has really thought about what that can look like in a technology AI domain. Now, AIs are not people, obviously. But actually that means that there's some additional challenges there, like how does, the wider population, the community, and particularly people without a STEM background, how do they understand what it's doing? How do they understand the boundaries that in which it operates? So there's some additional work on the public side to understand what an AI is doing and how it can work and what kinds of things it's looking for. So there is a lot of work to build that ecosystem, and we've barely scratched the surface. We're just starting to look at ethics now, which is, again, in the human domain, kind of looking at those really high-level laws or writing the Magna Carta of this is roughly, we want AI to be good. We want it to be human-centric, and that's great, but there is a lot of grey zone in which we have not done anywhere near enough thinking, and we're not bringing all of those other disciplines into the discussion. There's an expectation the tech sector is going to solve the problem, and the tech sector can't possibly solve those problems.
Well, and indeed, it's had difficulty solving almost all of its social impact problems
exactly.
to date.
And they aren't skilled to do it, and they can't possibly be responsible for what happens after, like how a product might be used and abused after it gets deployed and run. So,
can I ask, where do you think those investments need to come from? Is this government investment? Is it private sector investment? A mixture of both?
Look, it's definitely a mixture of both. I think the trick, there's a lot of responsibility on government in bringing those people together, because a lot of those disciplines where it's leadership and user experience, psychology, ethics, sociology, law, all of those domains, all of those disciplines need to be involved in setting the sort of societal boundaries and rules about how these can work. And also the people who are working in the domains of the problem that the AI is going to solve, they're their presence and engagement in the development of those systems is absolutely critical. And most of those disciplines don't know that they're needed. There aren't places to bring them together. There is no AI community beyond largely the computer science and engineering space.
Yes.
So there's a lot more government can do in terms of encouraging programs to bring people together, funding education programs that look at multidisciplinary approaches to advanced tech like AI or quantum or blockchain or any of the other range of advanced technologies that we have. There's some great opportunities for some multidisciplinary work, and it's absolutely critical. So government need to take a leading role in terms of trying to promote and fund that research into those spaces, explainable AI so that we can trust it to make decisions. There's a lot of work from an industry perspective, and the technology community understand this technology and the problems with it better than most. So there's a responsibility on them to get out and engage people, find the problems that we could solve. AI has immense potential to be transformative, but you have to know what problem you're trying to solve to be able to create something good that's going to do it. So there's a lot of work there, and I would like to see us start to really build that ecosystem out.
Okay, well, that just sounds really exciting, so I can't wait to read it. Just getting onto the broader cyber sphere, you worked at the Department of Defence for a really long time. When you're looking at the cyber landscape this year, what are the critical issues that you think are really unaddressed at the moment?
There's a lot. Cyber is really integrated into business in a way that, it increases every single year, and COVID has been a massive accelerator in terms of people working online and digitally. The government's approach to cyber and cybersecurity is patchy because it doesn't necessarily recognise the breadth of work that happens in the digital space and how vulnerable that work is. And so I think there's some really great initiatives that are starting to come out of government, looking at some of the harder problems, looking at developing a data strategy, looking at critical infrastructure support, stimulating the cybersecurity industry, collaboration between the industry and organisations like the ACSC and the intelligence community, DISA and DTA. Everyone's doing a lot of good work. It's just a lot of it is very separate.
Yes.
And bringing that together, because cybersecurity really is only as good as your weakest link.
Yeah.
And we have an awful lot of gaps with not a lot of link there. So I think that's a real challenge. Other biggest challenges, I think we haven't, again, quite got our head around the opportunities and risks of large-scale data collection and availability online and the kinds of things you can learn from it. From an AI perspective, it's great because you can use data to find out really interesting things, develop new capabilities, provide really great services. But it's also really quite dangerous from a privacy perspective because all sorts of things can be inferred by people who don't necessarily have Australia's best interests at heart. So the amount of data that we put on the internet, often by commercial companies because they offer us a service, and so we click on the terms and agreements box and use their products. But the amount of data that is generated minute by minute allows you to really sort of track the movements of everyone's lives. And I think we really need to have a better idea about where the vulnerabilities are with that. And actually, should we be exposing all of it? Do we need to? How is that managed? How is it protected? Where is it hosted? Who provides components of the supply chain that have access to that kind of data? It's a really interesting space. And again, I think it's a underdone one in the public domain and in government thinking. So that's a challenge. And of course, cybersecurity skilling and retention is enormously difficult.
Yeah, a perennial problem.
Yeah, perennial problem.
Yeah.
Trying to keep the best and brightest and get them working on, cybersecurity problems and staying in Australia, staying in the industry.
And also building a diverse workforce as well.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Right? So it's a real challenge. But I think that's probably one of the biggest problems that the sector currently faces, that we have an enormous enormous problems trying to fill. I hope that in the post-COVID world, we have some new ways of addressing some of the reasons that people don't stay, and being a little bit more flexible in terms of how we create work and where people are able to work from might give us some more interesting opportunities to bring in that more diverse view. Bring in, smart people from regional Australia who don't want to move to the big cities for jobs, or family reasons,
Exactly.
So hopefully it's an opportunity as well as a risk.
Okay. Well, we're running out of time, but I'm going to ask you one more question. It's a bit more of a personal question. What podcast are you listening to right now, and what book are you reading?
Oh, well, actually, I hate to say it. This is terrible. I tend to read trash when I go home because sometimes I just want to unwind, and there is so much going on in the world to keep your head around.
I hear that. Yep.
You just need to unwind. But without a doubt, my favourite podcast is Radiolab, and it is it's a podcast that was developed by a sound engineer and a science communicator that use sound as a medium to communicate different scientific or political or complex issues. And it's beautifully done, absolutely beautifully done. And each and every episode is on a really different topic. They'll develop themes for particularly relevant themes of the day. They had a series on COVID and responses to COVID and did some great research behind that. But they just explain their research in such a fantastic way that it's really engaging, and it's every episode I find myself reeling from at the end going, wow, I learned something new here.
Wow. Well, it sounds amazing. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there today. But Karly, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's been fun to be here.